Ever wondered how much of what you see in a biopic is actually true? And we're diving deep into the world of biographical films, exposing the stories behind the stories and revealing the creative liberties filmmakers take with real life events. And from exaggerated triumphs to conveniently omitted struggles, some biopics prioritize entertainment over historical accuracy. Let's unpack the films that bent, uh, twisted, and um, sometimes outright broke the truth. First up is The Greatest Showman 2017. Uh, while a dazzling spectacle, the film paints PT. Barnum as a champion of diversity. The reality, Barnum built his empire on exploiting people with disabilities and racial minorities. In a particularly grim example, purchasing and exhibiting Joyce Hess, an elderly enslaved woman, until her death, a detail conveniently left on the cutting room floor. Then there's Bohemian Rhapsody, which sanitizes Freddie Mercury's life for mass appeal. That the film glosses over the wildest aspects of his parties and sexual history, and manipulates the timeline of his AIDS diagnosis to create a more dramatic climax at Living. It's a rock and roll fantasy, but a far cry from the complex reality. Uh, a Beautiful Mind, 2001, offers a sanitized portrait of John Nash, the brilliant mathematician. The film conveniently omits Nash fathering an illegitimate child and his arrests for indecent exposure, focusing instead on his academic redemption. It's an inspiring story, but one that sacrifices honesty for narrative convenience. And The Blind Side, 2009, presents Michael Orr as a passive recipient of kindness. However, Orr was already an experienced football player and later claimed the family never adopted him, but used a conservatorship for profit. The film perpetuates a white savior narrative that diminishes Orr's agency and talent. Green Book portrays Dr. Don Shirley as isolated from the Black community. Shirley's family vehemently condemned the film, stating he was active in the civil rights movement and had many friends within the community. And the film's suggestion of a close friendship with his driver is a fabrication. Straight Outta Compton chronicles the rise of NWA, but omits Dr. Dre's history of violence against women, including the assault on journalist Dee Barnes. This omission does a disservice to the victims and paints an incomplete picture of the era. Saving Mr. Banks 2013 rewrites history to make Walt Disney look like a benevolent therapist. And, but in reality, the relationship between Disney and PL, Travers was contentious, and she reportedly cried during the premiere of Mary Poppins. Out of anger, Patch Adams is criticized by the real Patch Adams for simplifying his work into mere clowning. He felt the film ignored his decades of activism for a free healthcare system, focusing solely on slapstick comedy. Uh, The Imitation Game, 2014, presents Alan Turing as a loner and invents a subplot involving a Soviet spy. Historians point out that Turing was actually quite social, and the spy subplot unfairly casts suspicion on his loyalty. American Sniper presents Chris Kyle as a conflicted hero, but avoids addressing inconsistencies in his memoir and his controversial statements regarding killing and dehumanizing Iraqis. Captain Phillips hails the titular character as a hero, but crew members sued, claiming he disregarded safety warnings and put them in danger. The film ignores this internal conflict to present a straightforward story of heroism. Cinderella Man 2005 demonizes Max Baer, the champion boxer, portraying him as a vicious villain. In reality, Baer was a well-respected man who was distraught after accidentally killing an opponent in the ring. The King's Speech 2010 focuses on King George VI's speech impediment, but downplays his earlier support for appeasement toward Hitler and his family's initial support for his brother's fascist sympathies. Finding Neverland 2004 romanticizes the relationship between J.M., Barry and the Llewellyn Davies boys, glossing over the fact that the boy's mother was still alive and the complexities of their relationship. The Doors presents Jim Morrison as a constantly drunk and out of control figure, ignoring his intelligence and sense of humor, focusing solely on sensationalism. Mina faced backlash for casting Zoe Saldana and using darkening makeup, as well as for focusing on a fictionalized relationship and ignoring Simon's contributions to civil rights. And All Eyes on Me is criticized for inaccuracies and for fabricating scenes, failing to capture the depth of Tupac Shakur's personality. Hitchcock minimizes allegations of sexual harassment and emotional abuse made against Alfred Hitchcock, presenting a sanitized version of his behavior. Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, invents dramatic fights and exaggerates events, prioritizing action over the reality of Bruce Lee's life. Edgar presents J. Edgar Hoover as a complex figure, but fails to fully address his corruption and abuse of power. Rush exaggerates the animosity between Nicky Lauda and James Hunt, ignoring their early friendship and mutual respect. So there's a number of Pain and Gain turns a violent crime into a dark comedy, minimizing the suffering of the victim and portraying him as an unlikable character. Rudy fabricates scenes and exaggerates events to create a feel-good underdog story, distorting the actual timeline of events. So next time you watch a biopic, remember to take it with a grain of salt. What are they being doing? Present. These films are often works of fiction inspired by real life rather than accurate historical accounts. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time, this is our